Name the philosopher of nihilism. You probably said Nietzsche. Everybody says Nietzsche. God is dead, giant mustache, permanent expression of a man who just read your moral framework and hated every sentence. Easy case, right? Except Nietzsche thought nihilism was a disaster, not a conclusion, a catastrophe, and much of his mature philosophy can be read as an attempt to work out what human beings were supposed to do after the old sources of value stopped working. And yes, before Nietzsche nerds open the comments, in a late notebook he calls himself the first perfect nihilist of Europe, which is an awkward sentence for a video with this title. But finish the thought. In the same passage, he says he has already lived nihilism through to the end and left it behind him. That's not a creed, that's a survival report. One caveat before we go further, that line comes from his notebooks. The posthumous book called The Will to Power was assembled from Nietzsche's notes by later editors. Nietzsche did not publish that book in that form. Whenever we use the notebooks, I'll flag it. So what was he trying to survive? Start with the passage everybody quotes and almost nobody lets finish. The Gay Science, section 125. A madman runs into a marketplace in broad daylight holding a lit lantern and shouting that he is looking for God. The crowd laughs, but who's laughing? Not believers. Nietzsche is careful about this. They are people who already do not believe in God. The madman is not bringing atheism to Christians. He is bringing consequences to atheists. He turns on them.
We killed him,
he says.
You and I.
Then the questions get enormous.
Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the horizon? What happened when we unchained the earth from its sun?
And then he decides he has arrived too early. The deed is done, but it has not yet reached them yet. Lightning takes time. Starlight takes time. A culture can do something enormous and not hear the sound of it for generations. Picture a building. At the foundation is a Christian and metaphysical picture of reality. The universe has an order. Value is more than personal preference, and suffering can fit into some larger story. That's not just a religion. It is load-bearing for an entire moral culture. Now remove the foundation. Here is what does not happen. The building does not just collapse the moment you take it away. Everyone goes to work. The law stays on the books. People keep saying that's wrong and meaning it. From the outside, everything still looks fine. The cracks come later. That delay is what scares Nietzsche. In The Gay Science 343, he says that once belief in the Christian God becomes unbelievable, everything built on it, propped up by it, grown into it, including European morality, is threatened with collapse. The point is not atheism wins. The point is that we may have removed a foundation while continuing to live upstairs. So what is nihilism in his hands? In one of his notebooks, he gives a brutal formulation. The highest values devalue themselves. The goal goes missing. The question why stops finding an answer. And the dangerous move is tiny. Step 1, that old interpretation of the world was false. Step 2, therefore, nothing can mean anything. Step 2 does not follow from step 1. Nietzsche thinks people will draw that conclusion anyway. He also refuses the easy version of his own story. Christianity gave people meaning, then atheism destroyed it. Too simple. Nietzsche thinks the Christian ascetic ideal can turn itself against this life, making earthly existence look like something to repent of or escape. And yet, in one crucial sense, it worked. In the genealogy, he argues that what human beings struggle to bear is not suffering by itself, but suffering that means nothing. The ascetic ideal gave pain an answer, punishment, purification. A terrible answer beat no answer. That is why the third essay ends with one of his darkest lines. A human being would rather will nothingness than not will at all. The danger is not simply that we cannot stand a meaningless world. It is that we may accept almost anything to escape that emptiness. Back to the notebooks, where he distinguishes passive and active nihilism. Passive nihilism is exhaustion. The old goals no longer feel believable, but there is not enough strength left to create new ones. So you lower the ceiling, want less, risk less. Numb yourself. Active nihilism still has force. It attacks values and it can no longer honestly believe. For Nietzsche, that destructive energy can be transitional, but it is not the destination. Smashing values you no longer believe is not the same as having values. You can smash every idol in sight and still be no closer to knowing how to live. And then Nietzsche shows you the nightmare he actually fears, not a person screaming into the void. In the prologue to Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Zarathustra tries to sell a crowd on what humanity could become. They laugh, so he changes tactics. He describes the last man. The last man is comfortable, warm, healthy. He has a little pleasure for the day and a little pleasure for the night. He avoids extremes because extremes take effort. Everybody wants roughly the same things. Anyone who still wants something radically different starts to look like the strange one. He asks,
What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star?
and then he blinks.
We have invented happiness.
And they blink. And the crowd loves it. Zarathustra means the last man as an insult. The crowd hears a product pitch.
Give us this last man.
They shout.
You can keep your overman.
The horror is not humanity being shown a miserable life and settling for it. It is being shown a life with nothing difficult left in it and asking for it by name. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Nietzsche predicted your iPhone. He died in 1900. He was describing a tendency in the culture in front of him, not a product category. If you see the parallel, fair enough. I just don't want to pretend Nietzsche was predicting smartphones. What he's worried about is broader than that. The appeal of a life engineered to remove risk, difficulty, difference, and eventually the need to become anything more. Fine, the old values are hollow. Nietzsche picks up the hammer. And then he's standing in an empty field, because if you take apart every inherited answer, you have not solved nihilism. You have cleared a site. Demolition is not architecture. If breaking things is all Nietzsche has, then everyone calling him a nihilist is basically right. But Nietzsche clearly does not stop at destruction. He keeps judging ways of living, praising some, attacking others. So the harder question becomes, what could honestly be built after the demolition? Hence, revaluation. And this is where Nietzsche gets flattened into a motivational poster. Revaluation does not mean make up whatever you want. Nietzsche spends book after book judging ways of living, healthy and decadent, strong and exhausted, life-affirming and life-denying. Now, there's a real philosophical problem here. After tearing down the old foundations, what gives Nietzsche the right to make those judgments? Scholars still disagree. We don't need to settle that here. What matters is that anything goes is clearly not what Nietzsche himself is doing. He is looking for values that can survive without returning to guarantees he no longer believes. The cleaner idea here is self-overcoming. Nietzsche's language of power is complicated, and we shouldn't flatten it in either direction. It's not simply dominate everybody around you, but we also shouldn't sanitize Nietzsche into a harmless self-help guru. For this problem, the important idea is transformation, confronting resistance, becoming capable of more, and refusing to treat the person you inherited as the final draft. You are the material. Then Nietzsche gives this demand a name. Amor fati. Love of fate. He wants to learn to see what is necessary in things as beautiful, to stop putting reality itself on trial for failing to match his preferences, to become eventually someone who says yes. That's not passive surrender. That kind of resignation is much closer to the last man. Amor fati asks for something more demanding, not merely putting up with your life, but becoming willing to have it. And then comes the demon. In The Gay Science 341, a demon tells you that this exact life will repeat again and again forever. Every joy, every humiliation, every grief, every stupid thing you said at 15, same order. Nothing new, forever. Do you collapse? Do you curse him? Or have you had one moment large enough to answer again? Scholars still disagree about eternal recurrence. Did Nietzsche mean the universe literally repeats? Was it mainly an existential test? Can those two readings even be separated? We don't need to settle that here. As a test, it pushes the problem to the limit. Once the old guarantees are gone, how completely could you learn to affirm the life that remains? Not to a better life, to this one. So, did it work? Bernard Regenster argues that overcoming nihilism through the affirmation of life is one of the threads tying Nietzsche's mature philosophy together. Ken Gems agrees that Nietzsche understood the disease incredibly well, but thinks the cure is much less convincing. And Richard Scatt gives maybe the cleanest answer to our title. Nietzsche can reject absolute foundations without therefore being a nihilist about truth, knowledge, reality, and value all together. And that right there is the strongest objection to our title. Nietzsche really is nihilistic about a lot of inherited absolutes. No divinely guaranteed cosmic purpose, no moral order guaranteed from somewhere outside human life, no metaphysical safety net. Some readers push his skepticism much further, so the honest answer depends on what you mean by nihilist. Giving up absolutes is not automatically the same as giving up meaning, evaluation, or every reason to say yes to life. So the verdict not actually Nietzsche was an optimist. I don't think that's accurate. I think the verdict is that Nietzsche was not the philosopher who discovered that nothing matters. He was the philosopher who saw what can happen when the old reasons that gave things meaning stop working, and who noticed that most people might not scream about it. They might get comfortable. He took inherited answers apart because he thought many could no longer be honestly believed. But he never thought demolition was the achievement. The harder question was whether human beings could create, overcome, and affirm without the guarantees they had lost. He thought they could. Whether he proved it is a much harder question. Nihilism was not his conclusion. It was the crisis he was trying to survive. And that concludes the video. Let me know what you guys think about my argument in the comments below. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. Let me know also in the comments what other kinds of videos you guys want to see from me. I'm up to all sorts of philosophical conversations, so just let me know what you guys want to see next in the comments below. And as always, thank you for the conversation.